and don't watch YouTube. Like we are coming up. Okay. Don't watch YouTube. YouTube like they're going to share now. I don't watch it. We just said engineering. Company, okay. Most of them are all of them. You want to put it to the depth of HDMI. I think last week. HDMI is okay. HDMI is good. Now this is for my computer. Your projector. You this one I have. So you have the same problem with way it's not projecting. You can see the screen, but it's not projecting the video.
I think it's not duplicate.
Actually, users should get more compatibility. That's because when we start doing a stop,
All these we find. We have this part.
get a list of, get our IT
It's already run. It's already run.
I want next week, by next week, can be sorted out.
Yeah.
Oh, the screen is done.
Where this works.
No, it's not looking.
Okay.
Oh, very good.
I don't want to expect from it, but I think it's going to take time. Hmm?
Yeah.
I think we need another like
This is consortium of private companies. Private companies. Government one will overseas combined like yes.
You can see part of it, right?
Always.
We stopped.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yes. Why did that happen?
and no, until you said it today, but I'm already reading. The link has I already sent one. We have WhatsApp group. Susan created, but we haven't started yet. Problem.
We can't find it. We can't find it.
Then you can see that. You can see the screen. Okay. Look.
Lead.
yes,
It works. Yeah. Okay.
that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wait. Start. That's it. Sweet. Good morning, thank you, staff of HSS. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce you and welcome you to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Paul Scanlan. Mr. Paul is currently the Chief Technology Officer at Huawei. A couple of weeks ago, Paul visited our office. He had an interesting and knowledge sharing section all over the web. So we invited Paul to share his knowledge with all of you all. Thank you, Paul. Even doing a busy Christmas schedule in New Year. Paul has more than 30 years experience in the telecom and IT industry. He possesses a broad experience across most technology, having worked in a variety of senior capacities across technical, commercial, company, and business management. He is an expert in the business of telecommunications, managing of all aspects, concept to operations of telecommunication carriers, service provider, business. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Paul Scanlan.
You'll have to read this, I'm sorry. It's audio, but it doesn't go through the HDMI somehow. I'm not sure why. So that's why you just read here. I'll explain a few things in a moment. So what Richard is explaining here, I thought I'd try video because a video is a better way to introduce everything. But you just saw the word he had in there. It's incredibly inefficient. So if you go to any port in the world, excluding China, yes, we do all this in the ports in China, but outside China, they don't. They have a crane operator. So just imagine if you're the crane operator and you need to use the bathroom, and this is correct, you don't need two persons to operate the crane because one person has to be on standby in case the other person needs to use the bathroom. It's 40 meters to the top. It takes about 30 minutes to go from your place of work to the bathroom and back. So you can see that's just one simple problem. But the other problem here is that you have multiple people having to operate in a dangerous environment. And that's where you have safety, security problems, and inefficiencies. So if you just keep these three things in your mind, when I'm talking about different 5G use cases, how we apply 5G in industry to transform industries, that's it. So everything is about safety, security, and efficiency. In a hospital, safety, security, efficiency, right? Exactly the same thing. One specialist, 1 million people. COVID, 1 billion problems, yes? So this is Richard, a colleague of mine, who's actually in the port, and he's saying this is what they're doing. And so you can imagine, if you want to sit at home during pandemic, you can operate the crane in Port Plum from your home. There's no problem, right? So this is what we've done, yes? And you can see here, 10,000 cranes per day.
Sorry, Paul.
Yes.
Can the others listen to it?
Yes.
Without they can,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, online,
Yeah.
yes, the people online can probably hear it. The problem is you can't do multi, yes, it's a challenge, yes. So the other problem that you can see is that if you've got, it doesn't matter whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 or 2 containers per day, every container has a code. And today they do manual tally. Yes. Another one, and the vehicles, you saw this one here, there's no driver. Yes. You can't have autonomous cars on the roads in KL or even Singapore or even Norway. It's not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is because you're allowed to drive and I'm allowed to drive and you're allowed to drive. The autonomous cars don't crash, but I run into data and data crashes into Tunsbury, right? That's how it is. So the only way you can have autonomous anything is in a closed environment. And that's another area where this thing called 5G will benefit. I'll explain 5G in a moment, but I'm just giving you where's the money, because this is a business. Where's the money? If we invest some money in the port and we make it more efficient, that means instead of 10,000 containers per day, 12,000 containers per day, on $500 per container, we make money. Very simple, right? If we don't need 20 staff to run the cranes every day, we can do it with 10. We save money. We make more money, right? Very simple. Right? Everything's about money, okay? So I come straight to the point. If we have a loss of life or somebody falls and injures themselves, the insurance cost is enormous. And if somebody dies in a mine, in a manufacturing facility, in a port, the liability is millions and reputation is more than millions. So you can see why these things are important. If somebody comes in here to sabotage something or to steal things, again, it's all about money, right? So just giving you some examples. So this is where we're now under the port bridge where the tallyman traditionally would be working. What he's doing is, yes, he's taking the serial number of all of this. But a camera does this instantly. A camera can do about, if I have one camera here and take a picture in about a second, everybody's faces here have been recognized. Everybody. It can do about 200 per second. Just as an example. So to do these things, it's very simple for artificial intelligence to do this thing. And as he just said, there's many ways you can do it, and you can extend it to all industries. So as you heard, I'm Paul. I'm the CTO here in Huawei. I've been here a long time. I know Malaysia reasonably well. My family's Malaysian, and I built the Telecom Malaysia network many, many years ago, about 2009. And then Celcom and Maxis and a few other things we've done, and we did a lot of different construction. So the reason I'm here is because of the friend request of country. HSS is an engineering company. Now you know Telecom Malaysia and you know Celcom, you know Maxis. So if you want Celcom, you go to the Celcom or Bluetooth shop, you buy a phone and you plug in your SIM card and that's all you do, right? I don't think Celcom ever came here and said, I know how to transform your business, right? No. Do you think Celcom ever went to the port and said, I understand the port business, I know how to transform it? No, never. So let's take a better one, maybe, but one, Telecom Malaysia, okay? They do fiber, right? And they do SD-WAN. Did they ever come here and offer anything more than Wi-Fi and broadband? I'm guessing not, right? Now, it's not just in Malaysia. This happens in Singapore, Australia, the US, Europe. It doesn't matter, okay? But not in China. And I'm also pleased to say not in Thailand more recently. And not in the Middle East. So in the Middle East, China, Thailand, what happens is, I'll say somebody, but it's somebody with knowledge and influence who will say we have a problem or we have an opportunity and we want to fix this problem or we want to capitalize on this opportunity. What do we mean by that? If we already say that it's not the telecom company going to the industry to do this, then how is it done? It's not this industry saying, I need 5G to fix my port. He doesn't understand it either. And you don't understand it either. Most people don't understand it. So how does it happen? It happens from the top. So in China, Xi Jinping gets it, and his advisors get it. They understand. When the mine has 24 and 9 people die last year in 2 different mines, it's not China Mobile, it's not Huawei, who says we have a solution. It's Xi Jinping says, you fix my problem, I can't have any more people die. And when we start investigating together with construction companies or engineering companies, because China Mobile doesn't have expertise, we sell equipment and services. They make the net. We still need this gap. And that's why I'm here talking to HSS today. Because this is the gap in every country, and this is the gap certainly in Malaysia. So after we figure out how to do it in the mine, we put 5G in the mine, we put fiber in the mine, we put industrial cameras in the mine, we put IoT devices to track everything in the mine, we see we get efficiencies because there's no people. So we don't have to be careful that the robot or the construction machine will kill somebody or that there's gas or any other problems. Or there's a collapse in the mine. This will not worry because there's no people down there, there's machines. So suddenly we fix one of the biggest problems. And because we've removed the people, we've improved the operational efficiency by between 20 and 30%. This is significant. This is not 1% and see if you can make a business case. It's so good, we make $8 million out of a mine. There's 5,300 mines in China. That's $34 billion. Do we really care whether the US government stops us selling smartphones? Not really. You understand my meaning. So the opportunity is also like this mine in ports and in hospitals. It's because the similarities are the same. Here we use cameras, sensors, and 5G connection. If we go to a manufacturing facility, you can see that there's robot A, passes this thing onto robot B, does robot C, there's a conveyor belt. And today we have sensors everywhere and there's cabling, just like you've got cabling all over the floors here. But we don't do that in manufacturing plants in China. We get rid of this, it's copper. Copper is $1,200 US a ton. So if you collect the copper and you sell it, you make money. So there's some revenue already, which is not bad. And then you automate all this. So now we can have sensors monitoring the conveyor belt and we can predict that in 3 months we need to replace the bearing. And because we can predict it accurately, we know when is the right time to schedule the downtime so we don't lose productivity. And that's the biggest use case in manufacturing. The second biggest use case is, if we're manufacturing all these things, how can we tell that the quality is perfect? As it's coming through, high definition, 3D scanning cameras, the AI analyzes it in 3D, and it's either green or red. Yes, it's good, sell it. If it's not good, discard it. The third one, We're not all experts in the latest technology, but if we wear some augmented glasses, augmented reality glasses, and what does that mean? It's a pair of glasses that look just like yours. They're a little bit thicker rim because we need the rim to put the batteries, and we need the rim to put all the electronics. And when we look at something, and I don't know how to use this, it has 6 or 8 buttons, and I put the glasses on, I look at it, suddenly, if I point to the button, to the thing on the right, up will pop an explanation. This button is to do this. Or press this first, turn that second, do this third. So you can see it's a huge training enabler. So if we wanted to take your expertise, and suddenly we want to be, how do we do it in an MRI machine in the hospital? I don't understand MRI, no problem. Take the glasses, put them on, stand in front. Let's start 1, 2, 3, 4, and it'll teach you how to do it. If you, Tansri, want to make another facility up in Sarawak, just like this, HSS Engineering, you've got all your equipment, and you need to hire local people. How will you train them quickly? Put on a pair of glasses, step 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the real equipment, exploded view of everything. I want to fix a rocket engine. I know nothing about rocket engines, but I know how to use a spanner and a screwdriver, for example. So I look at it and it teaches me, turn this, turn that there, pull this, disassemble that. Everything is done. That's what augmented reality does. Forget the games, that's different. We don't make money from the games. We make money from this stuff. So just now I gave you an example. We're doing this already. In Malaysia, we don't have the gap yet filled between a telecom company and the industry to do these things. So I presented this one first for 2 reasons. It's very mature in China, and we have copied it to other countries. So that means when I say it's mature, it doesn't mean you can go and buy this from a shop or buy this from Huawei or buy this from China Mobile. You can't do that even here in Malaysia. What we mean is that the products exist with a number of partners. They are at the right pricing point, we believe, and we have a method to sell it to the industry. It's called go-to-market. We know precisely how many ports there are in every country in the world. From the database, we know precisely how many containers there are. From the number of containers and the physical size of a port and its age, we can make an estimate of how many people are working there. So you can see we have a lot of market intelligence before we even go and talk to the operator. So we have some idea of how much it'll cost, how long it'll take, and how much improvement to the port can be made. That's what this is all about. So what we would need to do with you is to go through the use case in detail with the port and then see if we can align and make sure everybody can share in this value system. Today they have a cost structure and they have a revenue structure. And if we now want to bring in something here, the cost structure will change. Somebody needs to pay for this. Yeah. And if we have people there and you have employment laws, maybe somebody needs to pay for changing that arrangement. So we have a number of challenges at every single port to meet and discuss how to execute this. Now, I can't see, we've met with Telecom Malaysia, we've met with Celcom, we've met with all the telecom operators. Maybe TM have a direction, but they need companies like you. Yeah, and that's the discussion that Dr. and I had just yesterday with TM1, in fact. So they have an interest in this. Dr. and I believe HSS have the capability and the relationships to go and talk and to try and structure an arrangement, a business deal. Yeah. So that's where I am starting at the moment. I might take some questions. Do you have any questions about some of the things I've been talking about? I haven't mentioned what 5G is intentionally. Yes.
So I have 3 questions. First is actually related to the augmented reality. Augmented reality, is it applicable to all different machines and equipment? Okay. The second question is the is Huawei's products currently, I mean, in the research and development specific to ports, or is it in other industries like water and sewage treatment in highways? You know, because we are involved in the whole loop of various industries, and yeah, I think.
Okay, so let's take in reverse order. Your first question you're asking is about, does Huawei's products sit in a particular industry sector? Can they be adapted? Is it in R&D? Is it? So when I said we took it overseas, a solution overseas, you can't just use a 5G base station, whatever you think a 5G radio is. Okay? You have to industrialize it, because when we put them outside on the tower, nobody's climbing the tower, other than the vandals perhaps, but nobody's climbing the tower to destroy it, yes? In a mine, if you have it's called intrinsically safe, I think you're familiar with this. If the product is not intrinsically safe, you can't use it in certain industrial applications. It's a little bit like in Europe, it's CE certified. Here in Malaysia, it's serum certification according to the industry sectors. That has been done. So the camera, it's not an ordinary camera. It looks like an ordinary camera, but we've industrialized it. So we put all this metal work around it and sealed it with different things so no sparks can get in, methane or gas or anything can't get in or out, those sorts of things. And we've done that for all the other products. Some things we make, some things we make the chip, the IC, the integrated circuit, and a third-party company, sometimes in China, sometimes in Malaysia, sometimes in Singapore or Thailand or Europe or US, takes this chip and they integrate it into something else. So if I wanted to make this 5G, I have a couple of options. I could take this interface here, just like we have there, and I could plug it into an existing 5G CPE, I'll call it, okay? Consumer premise equipment, consumer device. You could plug this into your phone, for example, and the phone has 4 or 5G, and now wherever the phone is connected, they could, in principle, control this. In principle, I say, because it depends on the make, the model, what functionality you can do. But that's an example. Now, that interface could be made anywhere. But today, we might need this clunky device to make this work. But if you're going to sell 1 million of these or 10 million of these, then you can recover your R&D cost by putting the chip inside here and doing all the buttons and everything on your handset. Yeah. So that even I come in here and I'm not an expert, your IT expert doesn't even need to be here. Your IT expert can sit or be on the MRT station traveling to Onaldama, right? And it doesn't matter where he's going, yeah? Because he can configure everything here according to what I require. Or you can have a simple menu on your phone. So we don't need the wires, we don't need the controlling. You can do that in just about an industry. But you can't do it if I say, so how many do you want? You say 1. You can't recover millions of dollars of R&D and the cost to do the integration into something like that. And you can't do that if you say, I want 1 million of them, Paul, and how much is the unit? $20, and the cost to the 5G component is $100. The economics will not work. Yes? So does that sort of answer your question? Oh, so you have an extension on that, and that is that for these products, we take them from industry to industry to industry. So we started the intrinsically safe components in the mine because it's the hardest, and then we found we can replicate it in a port. Then we found we can replicate it in manufacturing industries because they're hazardous environments. But they're big, they're clunky because of all the, it's not integrated. It's take an existing product and wrap something around it to make it fit in that application. And that's why the price today is high. But what I can tell you about Huawei's R&D, if today it's $8 million, you know, in 6 months it's $4 million, and the year after that it's $1.50. Because we know if we keep the price at 8, everybody else will look and say, aha, there's money to be made there, we can do that. And as Mr. Ren, our founder, says, somebody will come and eat your breakfast. So our business model is around 7% net. Just for information, yeah? We try and make 7% net. If you're 7% net, you're very operationally efficient, right? It's very hard for anybody to come in. Why did we go into the mines and the ports and everything else? Because the margin is 50+%. And if we see that, other companies will see that. And if we start doing it, other companies will also start doing it. So can you see, it's very important in business to make sure that you have a product plan or product roadmap that addresses all of these. the miniaturization, improved security of the products, the reduction in price, your marketing campaign to try and show to your customers there's more and more value. You can only milk the cow for so long, right? Before the cow dies. Your first question is about the augmented reality glasses. So in the augmented reality glasses, how does it work? First of all, you can't quite put all the AR inside a glass, right? There are a couple of limitations. If you want the computing power in the glass, physically the glass might be thicker or bigger, the sides of them, yes? And you saw that with Google's version. If you want to put that intelligence in the cloud, you need connectivity. If you have a radio broadcasting, like your phone, you consume energy. If you consume too much energy, the batteries will not last very long. So today, the first way we do it is we have a wire, and the wire is connected to your handset, just like this adapter. Because this is sold in hundreds of millions and the price is reasonable. You don't need a $1,000 one, $100 unit is fine. So you put that in your pocket, so the engineer will have it in his pocket, and there'll be a cable plugging in. And then the glasses will do different things. There is another concept which is mixed reality, which takes virtual reality, augmented reality, and puts them together in a pair of glasses. They're a little bit cumbersome, in my opinion, but we're getting to the point where we're able to integrate those things and miniaturize them. Just as we're getting to the point where we're able to put all the electronics inside the glasses. And I believe in the very near future, there won't be handphones. Glasses, if you think about the population, because I'm old, I wear glasses, so anybody over probably 40 in the whole world wears glasses. And if you're living in Asia, generally, specifically China, but a few other, you probably wear glasses most of your life. So a glass isn't a bad thing. I'm not sure why Google dropped it, but the glasses are probably not a bad thing to do. But in the near future, there are companies like Corning that are using the contact lens. You might think that's weird, right? How can a contact lens do all those things? But the contact lens, about 6 years ago, was doing 10 by 10 dot matrix. 4 years ago, it was doing 100 by 100. And they haven't announced it, but I bet last year it's full high definition. That's on a contact lens. You were saying, but how do I control it and everything? Well, you speak. So you'll have a sensor that detects the vibrations. How do you hear? Just like the Siemens hearing aid. How do I get the battery, the salt? Use a salt type of battery to power these things. Because the biggest challenge in a smartphone is the screen. The bigger the screen, the more batteries, because you're trying to light it up. If the screen is only this big, covering your iris, you don't really need a lot of electricity. So I know this might sound like it's really far in the future, but this is the direction that it's heading in. Did that cover all your questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. A question
Okay.
here. How does the transition happen? Let's say from what that you implemented or moving almost completely without any staff support. How does the transition happen from being completely banned to moving towards having just machines? Right?
So this is what we call the digital transformation process. And in any of the process, you have to fit in with the process, because it's not possible to take an existing company and say you're doing it wrong, or I've got a better way, I'm going to show you. Right? That takes a lot of faith. And even if the CEO gets it and visits the other port and is convinced of the business model and the numbers, it's very hard to execute it. And we have a couple of examples of why it's hard to execute. Let's take the simple example of the IT expert here and your IT challenges. Yes. Imagine if I came in and said, you don't need your IT team. This is great, right? Yeah, perfect, right? I can save how much I can save because we're going to do all these things. Yeah, please work with my IT team to execute. So I come, do you think your IT manager is going to want to listen to Paul? No, he has a job, he's got a department, he's got a budget, he's powerful, right? The same thing happens in every other company, right? So we have to do things in a slightly different way. We have to convince the senior management that this will improve their business. We have to convince the people who are operating it that this helps them. Right? And then we have to structure a program that accommodates these, because if the program takes too long, you won't achieve the business result. If you try and have people blocking you, you won't achieve the business result. So it's a very delicate way to tread. In China, it's easy. In Middle East, it's easy. Everything starts with the government tells everyone what to do and all the industries follow. But in a lot of other countries, ones called democratic countries, everybody has an opinion and nothing happens. And that's why you have millions dead in other countries, but not so much in some countries. So we have a lot of challenges. It's a program that needs to be done. Sometimes we take them to another port to show them. So you take the director of operations of the port. He will discuss with the director of operations, maybe to a couple of ports. How did you do it? How did you do it? Because people do it differently. Yes. What works in one country according to labour laws maybe cannot be done in another country. Perhaps the type of equipment, the generation of equipment is different. Perhaps the systems are not yet set up. So maybe there's many things that need to be done before you can just come in and say, put this in and turn it on, it works. It's never that simple. But I can tell you, we've done this in 2 years. And the one in Thailand was done in less than a year. Because we have a product. You can pick it up, you can install it, we have a process, who does what is the suggested way to do it. And if you've got a top-down approach, the government or the management will say execute it. So we have a methodology to do that. Can you imagine, the IT department is not gone, it's doing different things. It's also become improved in its operational efficiency. Any more quick questions before I jump onto something else? No? Okay, all right. Let me tell you now what is 5G. Because the moment I decide to give you an example to show you where the money is, because I want to focus here. I don't want you to focus too much on the technology bits. So, do you know how big a 5G radio is, a 5G antenna? Does anybody know how big they are? Would you like to make a guess? You've seen the ones outside on the towers? How big do you think a 5G radio is today? About a quarter the size of this. Now that radio has certain limitations, but physically that's what we could put. And the other ones are sitting 2.4 meters. So why the difference? When we deploy 5G, we tend to put it in very high frequencies. So maybe you've heard of the frequencies here. We deployed GSM 2G in 900, then we moved to 1800 because we needed more spectrum, because we have more users. And we sort of progressed like this with 3G, different spectrum, 4G, different spectrum, and now this thing called 5G. So we started 5G in a very, very high spectrum. And no, it doesn't fry your brain. All that's rumor and conjecture and lies, and it doesn't do that at all. I've been using all the mobile phones since 1981, and I think my brain is still okay. And I've had a phone glued to my ears all that time. And remember, the phone glued to my ears is broadcasting more energy than the device up there that is 1 kilometer away, or even 100 meters away. In simple engineering, it's 1 over r squared. So every time you add an extra meter, just 1 to the power 4, right? So the energy coming down is insignificant. It's the wrong study. It was done in 2000, and it was done for a particular reason by a school to stop the building of a tower out the front of the school back in the US. So it doesn't fry your brain. That's rubbish. Another thing we never talk about in 5G is how secure it is. You've all heard of security problems, right? It's been in the news. Other than pandemic, you've heard about security in 5G and all this thing. So when I was in New York 2.5 years ago, when they were just starting this topic, they asked me, what about 5G and security? And I said, oh, should we talk about that? Well, the first thing is 5G is more secure than 4G. And they all stopped and said, how can that be? The US government is talking about security in 5G. A few facts. The US spends $84 billion, 76 of it, on satellites orbiting the Earth. And if you're using 2, 3, or 4G, or Wi-Fi, and you turn on your phone, your device, those satellites know precisely who you are, where you are, what you're doing. Because they can intercept all that. And the Snowden reports proved all that. Now, when you implement 5G, things are very different. Because as soon as you take a 5G handset, everything is encrypted automatically. So you've heard about WhatsApp encrypting the application. Well, 5G, we encrypt everything. And we encrypt it at a level which is probably uncrackable. Maybe a quantum computer will do it in the not too distant future. But today you can't crack it. And the second one is it's like a VPN. You've heard of VPNs, right? It's like a tunnel. So it's a tunnel from here through the space station all the way to the other end. You can't see inside a tunnel. So now we could ask the question a different way. Why would somebody who has the ability to listen to everything not want 5G networks? Because they can't get access to the information. So that's the first component. And the US may talk about backdoors, but they have an open cloud policy. And you must have a backdoor in everything so that they can get access. So the first thing from consumer perspective and industry perspective is 5G is far more secure than 4G. And that's very important in industrial applications. It means commercial information cannot be hacked. It's a very important thing to understand. Now, 5G, what is 5G really? You've heard about speed and latency and massive connections. Well, let's not talk about any of those things. Let's talk about it like a bucket. So let's pretend that a 4G bucket is here and a 5G bucket is here. And they look the same. They're both white and they're both full of water, and it's the same water. And everything is identical, and the cost is more or less the same. But this 5G one holds 20 times more water than that one. So you're in construction. What's the biggest issue in construction? Site, right? You need the access, you need the permits, you need to construct the site, you need to operate the site. The telecom operator has the same problem. He builds a tower, he needs to rent the property or buy it if he's got leasing costs. And he's got construction costs, and if I need 20 times more, I've got to have 24G buckets, and that's going to need strengthening and an extra cost, right? But if I have the option to provide one thing that can provide 20 times that, and I have more customers growing, I need more buckets. So I either put 20 of the 4G ones, or I put one 5G one. And I think you can see if I put one 5G one, all the costs associated with transport, deployment, construction, strengthening become less. So 5G is about efficiency. You get more for the same, roughly the same amount of money. I say roughly because as a vendor, we don't want to price the thing at the same price because we have an advantage. So now when we come here to the use cases, why would we want to use something like 5G instead of 4G or instead of Wi-Fi? At the port, traditionally they use Wi-Fi. Now I have a colleague, his job is a penetration tester. That means he's a hacker. He's a paid hacker. He works for companies to hack in to show where the problems are, so the companies can fix this. So in the port of Singapore, one of the ports, I don't know which one it was, he demonstrated that container hanging over the edge of the bay because he hacked into the Wi-Fi network, took control of the entire system and drove the crane and put it here, and that's convinced the management that they should employ him to fix the security. So that's why we don't want Wi-Fi. Why? Because 5G is much more secure. So we're not even going to talk about Wi-Fi. I will if you want. There's a few other reasons we may not use Wi-Fi. The second reason we want the 5G is because can you imagine that we have this port connected with 4G? And maybe you were taking your son and you're driving nearby, and whilst you're in the office talking to management about something, your son is doing what all kids do, and they're playing games, right? So he's using bandwidth, right, from that 4G site. And the cranes are using the same bandwidth from that 4G site. And you know when you've got people inside your home watching Netflix on here and playing games over there and doing something over here, downloading, buffering. So you can't afford to have the crane buffering, right? Or the autonomous vehicle buffering. It'll be in EPO before it's supposed to be. Yeah? You get the idea. This is real. Now 5G, we can control that. We have the ability to give a separate slice to consumers, a separate slice to the hospitals, a separate slice to the port. And they're all independent. So we can do that in 5G. So that's two reasons we'd rather have 5G than 4G or Wi-Fi. You saw here, Richard was showing cameras, and I mentioned the use case where we use cameras. Cameras for security. Cameras can identify whether or not we're all wearing masks, for example. Okay, it's very, very accurate. So it can do these things. So that's PPE, occupational health and safety. All of these things can be done. Not can be done, they are being done right now. It's video, right? So we're taking a video image and we are uploading it. Now, if you have a look, if you do a speed test using your club, it gives 3 or 4 results, right? First one is jitter and a ping test, right? So some delay. Then it gives you the download speed. Then it gives you the upload speed. And the upload speed is always a lot less than the download speed. In fact, it's typically 10 to 1. That's how 4G was engineered. But not with 5G. With 5G, we can do anything we like with this. So the first thing 5G can do in this area is we can allocate more up than down if we choose. But also, remember this big bucket? Well, this big bucket also has more up than it has down, than the up in the 4G. 75 megabits and 2 gigabits. If you translate that, that's about 100 cameras compared to maybe 5. So if you're at a port, there's not one camera there, there'll be hundreds of cameras, and they're all transmitting video. 5G does this much better, more effectively, more cost effectively than 4G. So these are a couple of reasons why we want to use 5G instead of 4G or instead of Wi-Fi. If we were to move to another industry, and I think the next industry we want to talk about is manufacturing. Is that right? Sorry, any more questions about some of these concepts I've mentioned? 5G, and perhaps that's a different way you've heard 5G being discussed than in the past, right? Everybody tells you it's faster, right? Well, I mean, I have 300 megabits. Just to give you an example, in China, it's 300 megabits. And it's 300 megabits all the time. So a 50 meg file, by the time you hit update, it's actually finished. It's only the software front end and the GUI that's slowed down. The data's already been transferred. It's amazing, really amazing. So if we now move to a couple of other industry sectors. So first of all, ports, I think we have a very good opportunity. We need a little bit more engagement together between the companies to understand how the scenario works, and then for you to demonstrate that competency to the port, and then to bring along the telco together to make it happen.
You make it happen before you leave.
That's my plan, yes. I want to make sure, but I'll be back anyhow. You know, it's Malaysia, things will take some time. It's better than Middle East, right?
Yeah.
Middle East. But it's happening in Middle East. Now, how good is the business? In Saudi, STC, Saudi Telecom, is a government-linked company, and their revenue from this business is higher than their revenue from selling SIMs. Okay? And that's probably the only company in the world that has that balance. And the reason for that is the government understands, once digital transformation, understands the value of certain technologies, 5G, AI, cloud, and IoT, and knows that it has to deploy them. And it knows it has to enable. So that's why it's rather special. China gets it, Thailand is getting it as well. I'm hoping with our discussions with government here, Malaysia will get it. I think Singapore gets it, but I'm talking down there as well. Otherwise, they would have transformed everything. All right, so let's move on to a few other things. I'd like to show you another picture. And I'd like to highlight different use cases. Oops. We have a lot of security on our laptops, which is why things are a little bit complicated. Do you want me to go through all the use cases? Done?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Very important.
Yes. So I'm just using a hotspot here to Some of you might ask, why don't you just copy it from your laptop and give it to you? Yes, USB. You can't do that from a Huawei laptop. You can plug a USB stick in here, and when I come out and give it to you, everything's encrypted. So unless you have the permission, you can't de-encrypt it. And we have a lot of these other software systems that do this. Sorry, transcript. Just this. I'm going to give you a little bit of a guide in some of the things that we do in Huawei, and this will sort of also perhaps expand a little bit on some of the questions that you're asking. If we want to have use cases, 5G use cases, yes, the word here, you can see a couple of things with exploration, joint, and acceleration. Yeah? If you look down here, you see the word, the first thing we started with is the word partners. And then we move towards research topics. And some of these are maybe it's system integration, they could be many SIGs or so doing research together, and here you can see robots and warehouses and other sorts of facilities. As you move across here, we're now looking at new applications in different areas. And you've heard about all these things, right? You've heard the word smart, you've heard about drones and connected cars, and just now we mentioned AR, VR, and I'll give you some examples. But over here, you see a lot of different type of companies that are working together. And some of these, so this is the 5GAA, the Automobile Association of Europe. One of the interesting things about this company is the CTO is a former senior telecom executive. So he understands the telecom business and he's moving into automotive. If we come down to this thing called, I just spoke about that, we'll talk about, spoke about this one, and we move to connected cars. In connected cars, I mentioned about autonomous driving, but Europe has a plan for autonomous vehicles. And they've made estimates of how to do it and how much it might cost to enable the infrastructure to support it. They need standards to make it happen. Otherwise, BMW will not talk to Audi, and will not talk to the traffic light because they're all made by different companies. So that's why it's very important to have standards. How do we develop standards? We use different types of companies. So the University of Surrey, you may have heard of them. University of Surrey launches their own satellites. Very progressive company in Guildford. They also have a 5G research facility which collaborates with Huawei as a partner. We're not stealing their technology, we're not just paying them money. We contribute researchers, they contribute researchers. And we're trying to jointly develop it because they have a lot of smart people. But by ourselves, we're not smart enough, so we have to work with others. We see some consumer companies like these, they've got all these consumer, but companies like Philips. Philips make light bulbs, and you know they've got Wi-Fi in them, right? You can change the color through your app on your phone. I don't know where the money is, other than they make money selling it to you because it's a cool thing to do. But it doesn't really do very much. And even trying to do everything in here from my app, turn on the aircon and the phone, turn on the lights and everything, it's pretty easy to turn them on and off, and it's just a bit of rice, and it's paid for. I can live. You have platform companies like Tencent, Bosch. I call Bosch a platform company because Bosch make everything. You know, they make drills. So you probably know you're probably using a lot of their jackhammers, yes. So they put IoT sensors inside it. But who makes those jackhammers. Bosch also makes them. That means they're a manufacturer. They use cameras and IoT sensors and 5G in their factories to produce these machines, these tools, that also have IoT and 5G inside them, because they know they get productivity improvement in the factory to make it and quality improvements, and when they sell them, they now collect data. Just like when Boeing sends or Airbus sends an aircraft in the sky, every couple of minutes, data is being sent by all of these things into the cloud to somewhere. In Daimler's mentioned somewhere here, Daimler, all the Daimler vehicles are all connected. So Mercedes-Benz, Daimler, they're all connected. You don't know it. It all goes back through Deutsche Telekom. Deutsche Telekom had an agreement with every operator in the world, and that's how all the data is sent back to Germany. I discussed it with Deutsche Telekom CTO just last week on what they do and how they do it. And why do they want that? So they know your driving habits. Yes. They know the state of the car, and they know if there's going to be any problems with the car. Yes, because when you're selling a vehicle that's expensive, you want to try and keep that marketing price. In this business of cars, they transmit gigabytes of data every couple of minutes on the racetrack when they're testing and designing and developing cars. And if you go to the Daimler factory and you see the cars coming off the production line, they have to plug in and transfer the data into the car to make it work, the operating system, the power management software, and all those things. But they don't do that now. Now it's all done with 5G, and it's all done autonomously. Remove the wires, remove the people, make things efficient. Drones, you can use drones to do many things. I'll start with the problem of the drone. The drone is pretty cheap. You can buy one for $50 actually, yeah? That's a small one. And you can buy some for thousands of dollars. So the capital cost is not really very high. But every half an hour, 1 hour, depending on the model, you need to send it back and charge it up. So for that period of time, it's not doing anything, correct? What's it doing when it's traveling? Probably taking pictures of something using different type of cameras, generally. Again, we need 5G for that, and I explain why. But today you're using a radio controller, and some of the cheap ones are using Wi-Fi, so the distance you can see is about the distance you can use it. But with 5G, because 5G's latency, that is the time it takes to send the signal and get the signal back, is so fast that you can do it from 5G. But you can't do it with 5G if the drone is up in the sky and the 5G base station is pointing down here to the people in the shopping mall. Right? It's not going to work. So that also means we have to change the way we communicate with different type of things as we're connecting. And I think this is another opportunity for a company like HSS. What I mean is, you need to provide in a manufacturing the 5G inside. In a hospital, it's inside. If you want to do the farm, it's in the rural areas. These three places, and the drone up in the sky is not where Max's cell phone Digi make the base stations, right? You see the towers like this and all the antennas this way, face the people. Now you want them to face up, or you want to put them inside the factories. They don't do that. They do it last. They do it last. So I think there's an opportunity. We've been working on this for many, many years together. How to take this, build it, and sell it as a service, as an alternative revenue source. There are some small companies in Europe, one in Germany, one in UK, and they have a license in some cases. In some cases, they piggyback on the license of the telecom company, but they do all the things I've been talking about. They engage the port, they engage the manufacturer, they have the experts in each of these. They know how to talk to the business, they know how to talk to technology, and the execution and implementation of it.
Where is
Even operating.
Where is this company?
One company is called Freshwave in the UK, and the other one is a German company, which I can get the name for you, but I haven't met the German company, but I know the other company. Graham Payne is the CEO, and they do a number of different things. And I think there's a very big opportunity to try and do that, because this is the gap that's missing in every country. How easy to fill the gap? This one we need to test and see. Okay. Does this all make sense so far? The word partnership, ecosystem. This product or this thing we call X Labs. X Labs in Huawei has existed since 2012. In 2012, we created what we call the 2012 Lab. Yes, it started in 2012, and that's where we explore things. So 2012 is where we are looking at intrinsic research. If you're doing batteries, what's after lithium? That's what we research. If you're making silicon-based integrated circuits, what's beyond silicon? And graphene. These are the things Huawei does very deep research. And the X-Lab department is responsible for taking technology before it's deployed and saying, well, how can we do this stuff? So I've got examples of all of this and drones and everything, which we've been doing since 2016 with X-Labs, and we were trying to prove them then. So it's very important to understand these components. I'm not going to go through there. All right. So this is an example. You're asking also about can we use similar technology in related areas. So this is in Weifang. Weifang is a city in Shandong province, which is up in the northeast of the country. So it's not very far from Tianjin, for example. And they have what we put up here, macro requirements, and they're largely driven by the government or government enterprise, cross-department collaboration. And here you can see the types of industry requirements. So the Weifang or the Shandong government wants certain activity group. Here I can put the word regulation, but it's in river management and waste disposal, energy. This is a peculiar one. I'll come back with agriculture and resources. So what we do is we put the 5G or the IoT chip inside different devices. We put it in a manhole cover. You will be surprised how many manhole covers are open and create problems. I think you know you will have to have your tires repaired in your car. Meter readings. Today it's usually manual, mechanical, somebody comes and reads the meter. It's getting better, but it could be done a lot more efficiently. In these areas here, river management, or I'll call it water management, we can put sensors inside the water, in the dam, to measure pollution, bioterrorism. Somebody pollutes the water up there, the whole population gets sick or dies, for example. Blue-green algae, all of the different pollutants that come inside here. But more importantly, think of water as gold, or the money's, the bank in the money, okay? And at the moment, the bank is very careful about how it gets the money from here to you and how you repay it, right? Or you pay for it. But in water, there's pipes, and the pipes have been laid probably for 50 or 100 years, and they leak. So their gold, which starts at 10 million litres, by the time they get it to the people, there's 1 million litres missing. So we put sensors all the way along to monitor, again, the quality and whether there is any leakage. And right down to the end, we even have a meter reading, so we know precisely where your water came from, how much you're consuming, and what the quality is, and fix the leaks. We do it with electricity, we do it with gas, we do it with water. In energy, you can imagine that if we have the production of energy, maybe it's green, maybe it's fossil fuel. Maybe you're prepared to pay some money for fossil fuel. If you had a device in your hand, on your smartphone, an application, and there as you're about to turn on something or use something, or go to Starbucks, and you want to just double check, yes, Starbucks energy actually comes from solar, I'm going to buy it from Starbucks. That closed loop from where the energy is generated, transported, and consumed, and you as consumers make the decision, because the consumers are the one that make the decision. Everybody's standing up and saying, we want the world to be green, right? We want to fix the carbon dioxide problem. But then they go and haggle for 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Glasgow. And in the end, yes, we will try to do that, right? Whilst the people are outside protesting. So why I've mentioned this is because we're trying to do in these a closed loop management system. And you can only do that if you get data. So now we come to the next part of 5G. 5G can gather much, much more data than everything else. One 5G base station can gather about 1 billion pieces of devices connected at the same time. So you imagine how extensive are all of these things if you want to connect them. You can't do it with Wi-Fi, you can't do it with 4G. So that's why we are applying this. In Spain was probably the biggest. If you go anywhere in Spain, even the last 4 or 5 years, all the garbage has a sensor on it. It detects whether the garbage is full or partially filling up, and it communicates directly with the garbage collector to tell him, you don't have to pick up, these 3 bins because it's empty, so you can carry on. So it's efficiency, right? Reduction in logistics. Now just imagine if you had an application on your handphone and you knew where that plastic water bottle came in, or the government knew that the plastic water bottle came into your company, you sold it to him, he gave it to you, you put it in a recycle bin, but when I came and picked it up, I put it in landfill, right? So I go to jail or I pay the fine. Or you didn't put it in recycle, you put it in the wrong bin, and therefore you get fined. Or the company that distributed it wasn't distributing it with the application so that people could make these choices, you get the fine. We can track all this. That's what 5G allows you to do. There's a lot of opportunities in this. In construction, since you've got a lot of construction, we now put sensors inside the concrete. So the sensors are monitoring the concrete over the period of time to predict whether the concrete will fail in the future. I don't know how real accurate that is or how good it is. I'm not an expert in construction. Maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not aware of it. Any questions at this point? Okay, so this is a very simple example here again with wave pump. And I'll just extend it here. I'm not familiar with this PowerPoint. My colleague just sent it to me, but I'll pick up on it. So the street lamps. You have a couple of options on what's a smart street lamp. As the sunlight goes down, you could have a sensor in the street lamp. This is how a lot of them work today. And as the sunlight comes down, the luminosity from the sun comes down, the light comes on. Pretty simple technology. The next example is, if I could detect cars at different times, maybe I can control that electricity and turn the lights on and off more dynamically. Late at night, nobody's traveling along the highway, along the back, along the wrong, I can turn the lights off. You may want to consider still safety because light is, what people are more familiar with, and therefore there's less crime perhaps. So this is the concept of smart street lighting. And you imagine a street light is every roughly 50 meters. So that's billions or hundreds of thousands of street lights that need connection if you want to improve the energy consumption in this industry. Smart parking, you can see a thing here about this big. So today, if you go to KLCC or any parking lot, you see the big pipes running across the top. I had this discussion perhaps before with you, and the red light, the green light. Yes, usually you follow the green light and you find that if it's not green, there's a car there. Yes, it's not working. The sensor is not working. That costs a lot to install. That costs a lot to maintain. But you imagine a small sensor, a small device that only costs a few tens of ringgit. And you drill a little hole, put it in with epoxy, and then you leave it for 10 years. Now we have something else that it can do. Because it's connected to the 5G network, on your handphone, if I say, example, I want to buy brown shoes. Paul, you should park in bay number 54 on the third floor because the lift is there and takes you straight to the shop that sells brown shoes. Now that's a very advanced example, but a simple example is which one is active, which one is not. It's on your phone, you can pay instantly. I don't have to have touch and go. In fact, touch and go isn't necessary. All the toll gates are unnecessary.
We don't see it implemented in Wayfund.
On many, Wayfund has done all of these, and this one is probably the first use case. This one is the garbage cans, and then the lights. Parking, garbage, lighting were the first 3 things we did in China. Yes, it's exploring, and we've rolled them out in lots of countries. It's an off-the-shelf product. Probably even Malaysian companies are now manufacturing this device. So if not, one of Douglas friend's food, he makes it, so it can be done very easily here. This, I think, is a very good opportunity to do many different things. And what's important is, these are the results. No point talking about technology if you can't measure things, but 37% power consumption reduction, that's significant. This is hundreds of millions of dollars in electricity. And if you can reduce, that's what I'm saying, if you can integrate with the consumer and the consumer is aware of that, the consumer will make choices. Use less energy, eat less, do this, whatever. Yes, they'll do those sort of things. So irrigation, I think that's obvious. Yes, you can measure. So I'll explain it. We put sensors inside the farm. The sensors monitor a couple of things. They monitor the water content of the soil. They monitor the fertilizer or the nitrogen levels and phosphorus levels within the soil. And they also are monitoring how much light is coming. And that's fed into a system that can do a couple of things. It can, yes, do irrigation and control the irrigation very precisely, but it can also monitor how much fertilizer is required and allocate when the place should be fertilized. With a camera, whether it's a fixed camera, 4K, or a drone, it can identify pests and weeds. And then you can be very targeted where you apply pesticide. So this is all about in productivity. Drinking water safety, I'll just discuss this one. So these are all implemented. If you go to Wayfarm, you'll see a management platform. I don't think they put a picture here, but there's a big management platform, a big dashboard, and you can see all these factors. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Let's say for the example of the smart street light, right? If we were to go to let's say highway concessionaire and you want to tell them, okay, for this highway you can implement, or you should try and implement
The
the
smart
smart
lights.
street light. So how does the 5G system exactly work in terms of from the base station, the network going to each of the equipment, receiving and transmitting the data, and the OPEX and CAPEX, I mean the CAPEX versus the reduction in the OPEX,
Yes.
is that done by Huawei or do we have to work together? Or how is that?
Great questions. So again, I'm working the back reverse order. Huawei doesn't make the sensors. Huawei makes chips. So we make IoT chips, 5G chips, etc. IoT, 5G chips. We make handphones. So we make many of the components are in the handphones. We make everything in the 5G base station and 4G base station, everything in the fiber, the optics, all of these things. So sometimes we do some bits, sometimes we work with other partners to do bits, and sometimes we do everything. In that IoT sensor component, Huawei took the decision not to be the device manufacturer. Okay? So that means you need to take the chips, you need to put them into a device. There are many companies that are making, let's take the smart street lights, the smart street lights, who make and integrate this chip inside a module which sits inside the light. Now those components are identical to the chip that's in here, 5G and IoT, the radio, transmitting, receiving, information integration to a CPU, battery, and maybe a little bit of storage. Generally, you don't need all of those things, but it depends. The reason it depends what you want to do at the site. If you just want to sense and put everything into the cloud, then this can be very cheap and simple, and you're paying more money to send lots of data to the cloud to be processed. If you want it to be very smart, then it needs more CPU, and CPU needs battery, and if you have to size the battery, and the thing becomes more expensive. So you have to think of, when we're talking about the business model, you have to think about which method you will consider according to the business model of who's going to install and manage the streetlights. Right? So now, who's the direct beneficiary? The direct beneficiary is it Tenaga? Well, Tenaga probably wants to sell more electricity, right? The local council would probably prefer to pay less electricity. So probably it's the electricity, probably it's the local council. Perhaps at the federal government level, it can see that if I can optimize all the street lights, I actually pay less and have less need for Tenaga investing in another power station because I'm the one who funds that. Perhaps you could say that if I can integrate that with cars, I can make it safer. That's a government level, maybe a state or a federal government. Say, Selangor is safer than Johor, example. So there's a bit of competition things going on. This happens in these states, by the way. Weifeng announces this and Shanghai announces that, and then in Guangzhou and says, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be the leader in this one. They're all competing. Why? Because jobs. I've got the smartest state. I build the optics. Oh, optics is great. I'm going to live in Chengdu. Really, that's exactly what happens, right? Right now, if I say to you, would you like to live in Germany and continue in Germany? I'll go there, right? I earn more money. Why? Because it's smarter, better, safer, cheaper. So that's why you want to do those things. What Huawei does, Huawei can do a couple of things. We can bring your customers to any of these cities to talk to the administration, see how they did, what they did, who they used, who are the partners. Yes? We can tell you those things, but sometimes it's better that you see it for yourself. How do we make the business model? I can't do the business model if I've been doing business models in Germany. They will not apply here. So we need a local partner who understands this business, because you know precisely how much the street lamp post costs, the street light costs. You know how to install them because you've been doing this for 100 years. So you're an expert at that. What we can do is we can bring in a partner that has the module that can sit inside here, or it's manufactured in Malaysia. You can choose those components. And then we can work out what the new cost will be. And then we can look at the value. How much are you saving compared with how much it costs? And then you have this opportunity with CapEx versus OpEx. So CapEx for OpEx replacement, yes, you're quite right. Who would do that? Maybe the manager of the road might, if he's responsible for the entire operating costs of the road, of the plus highway, for example, until he hands it back to the government. That's quite possible. Maybe it's a new business model. Maybe you can say, oh, you know, I can make so much money on saving electricity. Maybe I'll own the road, private road from here to for example. Yeah. There's many different ways you can do that. What Huawei does is we bring the use case to partners, and we like to share the use cases with you for you to understand them, because you have expertise that's different to Huawei's, and you have relationships that are different to Huawei's. So we can do this first part. The second part we can do is we can run a proof of concept together, maybe jointly invest to see that it works, to measure all the numbers and make sure it's real. I can tell you now, in the world, for all the base stations, the mobile base stations, all of them, we have analyzed all of them. And if we keep building 4G, we will double the carbon footprint. We go from 300 million tons in 2019 to, by 2025, to more than 800 million tons. I just told you the biggest topic in the world is green planet. So if you heard that, why would the minister not say, quick, close down all that 2, 3, and 4G, just build 5G? Well, it was a year ago we said we're going to have a new 5G company, and in that 1 year, China's built another 1 million 5G base stations. So too is Thailand's built tens of thousands. Europe is still talking as well, just to put it in perspective. So can you see that it depends who's getting the value? And from there, then you have to construct the business model. And in constructing the business model, you need to bring in all the right partners. And that's why in the first slide, exploration with partners. Partners, not just industry, maybe universities, maybe third parties, maybe Grab needs to come in. Grab's got the platform. Okay, I can do everything and pay on the Grab app or a touch and go. You know, you need these types of partners. You think Telecom Malaysia thinks of this? No. It's not going to happen, right? So this is a complicated job that I have in the world, but this is my job. And so just because we're talking about smart cities, we sort of like to give analogies because sometimes it's a little bit easy for people to think about, but it's, you know, what is smart, right? So it's complex. It's like a nervous system, right? Billions of neurons. It constantly learns and enhances. So a smart city is not about putting in smart streetlights and saving electricity. It's about understanding those streetlights, understanding the pattern of cars, feeding that back up, and maybe communicating with the traffic lights and the routing system to say, there's 50 lights here, but 12 lights here. Route the cars this way. Yes, because the amount of fuel you use by going this extra half a kilometre is actually less than the amount of energy, electricity, that will be consumed if I turn on the extra lights to make your car go along this part of the highway. We can't do that, but an AI can do that very easily. So a smart, constantly learning, smart, open platforms where all players. Yes, if anybody can come in and say to the government, hang on, you let me interface to your lights, I have a new use case for you. Okay, then they can do it. But if it's a proprietary system, it won't work. And the last one is, as I mentioned, all players to collaborate. So I just want to keep highlighting this because this is important. If you want to get it done, I mean, the missing link we had yesterday in the team discussion until you mentioned the word was relationship, right? And that's another reason why we want to talk here. So, there's lots of these sorts of things. Yeah, in public, whether the park, I mean, this is digitalizing everything. Yes, and here are examples in many countries. Nigeria has smart meters. Nigeria, right?
Are all this by Huawei?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. We make $130 billion, right? We don't make it by accident, and we don't make it all in China. We make a lot of it outside China. We make about 60% outside China of the revenue. We don't do all the components of everything here. Yes. So we make, a connected elevator. Connected elevator is probably with Schneider. Huawei, in this particular case, Schneider makes the lift. Schneider makes the management software that you see inside the things. What Huawei does, we make the IoT chips, and we make some of the 5G, or in the earlier days, it was 4G modules. Yes, and we collaborated together, and now we take that information and we put it in a cloud, which is run by Huawei, and now we're adding AI, artificial intelligence, which is run by Huawei. So it's a collaboration, but this is definitely done with Schneider. This one here in Germany, yes, with Holmer, this is a program that's done jointly with them. Sometimes the network is not all Huawei. Sometimes half of it is ZTE or Ericsson. You have to share, yes. In Zane, yes, Zane loves Huawei. Yeah? I know the city very, very well. And what's next, Paul, for us to do? And she just executes it, yes. So they came up, they wanted to really execute smart home, so they started putting a lot of smart things in the home. To give you an example of where money is in, and the way people think differently, there's no fiber, or very little fiber in Kuwait. So to make a smart home, you had to have a different concept, which is why they really embarked on 5G. Just overnight, all 5,000 base stations are 5G. And Zane is great. The whole country, Kuwait, almost no 2 and 3G. Everything is 5G. It's amazing. If I compare Zane smart home and Hutchison smart home, not Hutchison, CSL, PCCW, Hong Kong Tel, yes, in Hong Kong, they make more money from smart curtains in the home than the broadband. And the reason for this is because they started the service smart home to target the top 3% of the population who have lots of money. And it was more like a consulting service. So a consultant comes to your home because you've signed up for this smart service and you want the lights connected and the fridge connected, everything. But can't you also make my curtains connected? And Paul Berriman, the CTO, was telling me, a friend of mine, and he said, we were scratching our heads, well, all right, I guess if that's what you want. So we had to go and engineer the smart curtains. He said, we make more money because a curtain is expensive, especially, 5 meter long. It's thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of Hong Kong dollars. He said, we make more, we make 268 million Hong Kong dollars with curtains. It's just crazy, right? But so a lot of these things have other applications, potential applications. I mean, even parking. Don't park there, park here. My cost is less than that parking over there because I know exactly how many parking spots there are. Just like filling up seats on a plane. Yes, the closer it is to the time of the plane taking off, the cheaper the cost of the seats on an airplane. You buy the package in advance, you get one discount. As it goes up, the price goes up, and then the price comes back down. You can do the same thing with any of these things. You can do the same thing. We were doing it with electricity. Yes, off-peak electricity. You can do it with all of these things. But you need that continuous feedback in the loop. So yes, country, I can show you example after example in every country where we've done these types of things. I mean, I'll put it this way. Why does 5G matter? Yes, I produced this one, but you can just get some examples of what you can do. And this now downlink, when we started, this is actually very old slide there, but this one here, downlink with 2 gigs. Now we do 20 gig, yeah, so you can imagine. And the best you get, the typical numbers there in 4G. And capacity, how many things can you have? So just giving simple examples here. And this last slide, this one here is really trying to show I think we get it, right? Down here, we want to transform these things because we can improve everything. But that can't happen. The telecom guy in the middle only sells SIMs. And the first thing you've got to understand is he's selling security and reliability. I have a network that is far more secure and reliable than you have the money to build one. So please use me. But he doesn't say that. And by the way, I can exchange the information across all the different things because that's what I do. And I can sell you cloud-based service and storage. None of this is SIM. But you can't do that unless you have all of this. So you need these types of guys, and you need these types of guys. So you're a technology provider, in a different way. You need government, you need service, but you need everybody to do it together. So I put it up, it's collaboration and trust. Because if you want to transform this, if I came to you now and I said, I want to transform your company, all right, what's my first question? Can I talk to your CFO and open up your books and see where you spent all your money? I can't possibly show you that, right? Trust, because if I know why you're spending the money and why you're doing things, I mean, why do you have 30 people sitting in the room here? Why do you have 30 people working for you? I'm just asking. Oh, because I need 10 to do this and 6 to, okay, but why do you need 10 to do those things? Ah, because they're doing this and this and this. Okay, but why do they do those things? Yeah, okay, so now we're getting to the real answer to the question. We have to do this in all industries to really understand what the business of that industry is and what their pain point is so that we can apply all these technologies and then we bring the right parties together to make it happen. I was trying to show you the opportunities here in Malaysia, which I've developed. Any questions related to what I just? You must have lots of questions. Don't be shy. Yes, please. You see, if I look at you long enough, you'll answer.
Okay, so I just want to ask you just your opinion. How fast do you think Malaysia should start to implement this technology? Considering in terms of in this industrial sector, considering that our current food flavors are quite cheap for it. This one.
So we can, if everything was done through the original telecom companies, Cellcom, Access, DG, and Mobile, etc., then within 2 years you can have very, very good footprint. And the reason for that is you've got a pretty good 4G network with everybody. And the way you build a 5G network is on top of the 4G network. So if you've got a good 4G network, a very expansive 4G network, it's pretty easy to build it, and therefore it's reasonably quick. Some of the operators here purchased equipment in the last 2 or 3 years, and that means the hardware is 5G compatible. If it's 5G compatible, you pay the money, you download the software, and tomorrow you have it. So we have this sort of tomorrow, within 1 or 2 years, and then you have new government policies with new companies. The last part I can't answer. I don't know. President was announced in 2024. I don't know the answer to that at all. But if we follow the traditional mechanism, Malaysia could do it quite quickly. Very quickly. But that's not in the industries. Let me explain why. If you go to Petronas, Petronas was a $5 million ringgit deal under Twin Towers, I think. LCC Twin Towers, to put in-building solutions. As you've seen the in-building solutions, it looks like a round thing like this. It's a passive antenna. Passive. Because it's passive, it can't communicate both ways. It's just providing you a signal, and you can use your phone for broadband. But you can't do all these industry use cases indoor because it doesn't work that way. So that would have to all be removed and replaced with a 5G solution. That's not going to be cheap. But you're right, the labour cost, which is the dominant cost, can address that very practically. The good news is that those old systems probably cost today a tenth in terms of the electronics. And you don't need all of the complicated cables, the feeder cables you've probably seen. You don't need it. It's all done with RJ45. In fact, I'll teach you and train you right now. Undo 4 screws in a Wi-Fi router, unplug the RJ45, put it down, put the 5G one in, it's finished. There you are, I've just trained you. I'm being very serious. That's how we've engineered 5G today, and it's about a quarter the size of this box. Yeah? So we have a lot of ways that we can speed up the deployment. And the reason we can do that is because companies like Huawei, and I'm sure Ericsson and the others, have been focusing on how do we make it smaller, lighter, yes, cheaper, but thinking about deployment, thinking about energy costs. Because if you have to deploy a 5G one, oh, and it needs twice the energy, you have to upgrade the circuit breakers or the cable and the power system, you know, everything, the price goes up. So it's pretty straightforward. By the way, I didn't mention one rather important thing. I mentioned, you know, I keep talking about analytics and things that we can. But another reason why 5G is very important, I mentioned that it's able to collect more data. 5G by itself doesn't do all the things that I mentioned. 5G needs AI. What 5G does is it connects things that today we're not connecting. Today we connect people predominantly. All these things I've shown, we're connecting things, and there's billions of things compared with a few billion, I think there's 7 billion people. So when you're collecting all this data, you have to efficiently store it. And you're going to store it in a cloud because it is more efficient, more flexible. So even I have to comply with information security, right? So 5G collects the data and puts it in the cloud. AI is nothing really more than, we used to call it machine learning. And it starts with, I'll say, mathematical algorithm. And we tend to use data scientists. If you can all use Excel, you're a qualified data scientist. Okay? Because it's cell A times B divided by C, square root of whatever. How do we know what it is? We don't. But when we get the data and we start thinking and applying what logic we want, then we start to build up these algorithms. Now, we've actually had most of the algorithms for 40 years. But the challenge has been we couldn't collect enough data in real time. We certainly couldn't cheaply store it. And we certainly didn't have the CPU, the processing power, to be able to analyze it all in real time. Now we can do all that on a chip. You actually have one in your handphones, especially the latest Huawei one, has an AI chip or an Apple. And what it does is when you're taking photographs, it does a lot of real-time optimization, things that you would never have thought about doing. And depending on how you're using it, it will optimize those as well. So that's what AI does. So I'm going to show you. So this is, Huawei has its own internal cloud. We call this the 3 clouds. 3 clouds in Huawei is purely for internal. First part of the cloud was to show customers the solution in real time. The second part of the cloud was, well, we have 190,000 people. We need to train them. So if I have a great idea, what am I going to do? Stand up here and give a lecture all the time? Perhaps I put it on the cloud. Not as just a PowerPoint or as a video of me talking, but of all the interactive things that I can use. And the third part is you can actually do solutions because we have all the data from all the telecom companies and all the configuration in our cloud because we build them all. So I can come here and show Telecom Malaysia and say, look, here's how much it'll cost you to connect all of TDDI by fiber. Because I know precisely the Latin line of every fiber node and I can calculate it instantly. And I can show you how much money they can make because I know the output, the revenue. So that's what we use our cloud for. So I'm going to show you a snapshot of one part of the cloud that I developed.
This for the Malaysian.
I did it for about 20 countries around the world. Okay? The only reason I don't do more is because it takes time and costs money. And for some of the data, I actually did everything. So this is Malaysia. And if we were going to pick which industry would we focus on, there's 2 parts of the graph. This is 5G's benefit to the industry's GDP, not the GDP of the country. And here you can see it's just over $5 billion US per year in 2030. You can see that energy, transport, and then agriculture are the next 3 biggest ones in terms of money, but they're a lot smaller. Now, if you wanted to understand.
Sorry, what is the first one?
This is manufacturing. Manufacturing, transport, construction, media, health, retail, energy, and agriculture. I got a third-party consulting company in the UK to do all this analysis for me. And when they look at, let me finish this part and I'll explain what they did and you'll understand why it's significant. If you now look at these colours up here, so this is manufacturing, the top one up there is probably, so the top one is manufacturing, the second one is transport, and then energy and transport. So manufacturing, energy and transport in that order. If we have a look over here, this is the impact by year, the impact. So in this particular case, energy manufacturing can improve 6 times. That means that it's very under-digitalized in Malaysia, the manufacturing industry. This varies by country. If I pick another country, you'll see these things swap around. The analysis, how did they do it? The methodology. They talked to the industry people. They didn't just internet search. So they talked to the industry people to understand. Do you understand this thing called 5G? No. Okay, thank you for coffee. Goodbye. Do you understand 5G? Yes. What do you understand? I expect it to fix this problem, this problem, this problem. It's very different across industries. It's very different country by country. This adoption is a function of a few things. Government policy, adoption of technology by people, and adoption, as you asked, how quickly can a company launch it or roll it out? Every country is different. There's also some GDP per capita components because you need sometimes some money to move the things around. So if we establish that these are the, I'll just give you an example, you know, because Guatemala, yes, you'll see the numbers are very different. Yes, for a different country. So transport is a big problem, and not big problem, big opportunity. So in Guatemala, you have transport, agriculture, it's a big agricultural country, and very big on retail. So all of these countries you can pick and choose and it'll tell you. But the question we really have is, for that particular country, so let's pick so in Malaysia, in manufacturing sector, first of all, from the government's perspective, the Sustainable Development Goals, these are the ones that helps. So if the government's pledging things in Paris, then it helps the minister understand what happens here. So we have 3 examples of the 3 use cases that I mentioned. One is predictive maintenance, going to precision monitoring, this is about quality and augmented reality. And you can see for Malaysia, predictive maintenance is not really the issue. It's the opportunity sitting here in quality control. And these are the metrics that you improve. And the second biggest one is actually using augmented reality. So that's what tells me that Malaysia really has an opportunity in transformation in its manufacturing industries. And we can do the same in health or other sectors and see precisely the same things. If we went to the health sector, for example, it'll give us,
Yeah. Can we look at the health?
percentage of health is good. So again, health obviously fixes poverty and improves quality of life. So in Malaysia, it's about 6.4, 11.5, let's call it 12 or 13%. You can improve the health sector by 13%. That's pretty significant, right? In terms of cost, it's probably the biggest cost in Malaysia's health. Yes, so that's a very good example. And here, you know, extra patients treated, yes, because that's something. I mean, this doesn't make money connected ambulance. I wouldn't worry about it. You need to connect all the roads, and today in Malaysia you still have drop calls, so it's not going to happen for a while. Thailand is now experimenting with the first of the ambulances, connected 5G ambulances. We've done that in Thailand, and that's because, I'll show you a picture in a moment, Thailand has thousands of 5G sites already deployed. Smart hospitals, smart manufacturing, smart ambulance, already deployed. So it's a big number.
You look at agriculture.
No, I put these in ready, but I haven't done them. I've only done manufacturing, health, and energy. Yes. Sort of, the budget's not there to do. I can show you how to do it. If your company wants to do it, I can show you how to do it. I can put you in touch with the consulting company in the UK, and for 10 tens of thousands of pounds, something like that, per use case. They'll do it in a relatively quick period of time. Yes. What I focused on in the next phase, which is finished just now last week, I have a draft of it, is I've asked them to take a country, which was Thailand. And the reason for Thailand was Thailand, China, okay. Thailand, Huawei operators, okay. Rather than use Germany or UK because we had other challenges. I could have used Malaysia, but the spectrum wasn't there and the deployment of 5G wasn't there. So I said to them, take manufacturing and I want to see exactly how to do it at scale in a country. And I want a model, and I'll put it in here, it'll be another application here. And now you'll be able to do what you're going to ask next, which is how do we do it? Or the question you ask, how do you do it? You're going to punch it in here, fill in a few tables and estimates of things, and it'll say, here's the top 20 companies in Malaysia that we recommend you talk to because we've already surveyed them, and these are the guys who can do this job. And here are other ecosystem partners, and you don't have the parking meter yet, but Thailand's got one, it's cheaper. They've thought about the whole ecosystem and how to take it to market. Yeah, so that's just maybe a couple of weeks away. But if we were to say that, this is quite good, right? I mean, you're convinced, right? If you're the minister country, you'd be saying, this is great. I want to transform the manufacturing industry, right? You say, when can we do it, Paul? Oh, okay, so here's the problem. The problem is, so you have 374 hospitals in Malaysia. We just want to look at healthcare. And here we can see the coverage according to different speeds and whether it's 4 or 5G. If I click on 5G, of course, it would be pretty much empty. There'll be a couple of red dots. So let's do that as a practical example. So DNB is rolling out 5G right now. They said it in the newspaper, so it must be true. So I will now put 5G here. And okay, that's actually, there we go. So now what we have is, we just identify we can improve the healthcare sector by 13%. That's roughly $2.5 billion. So that's both reasons for doing it. So here's the hospitals. Right? Doesn't look like the coverage where they're building the site is where the hospital is. So it's not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is because you gave DNB and said, connect 95% of the population. You didn't say, connect my 374 hospitals first. See the difference? Yes? Yeah. Now things get worse if I click on manufacturing, because as you saw, manufacturing has many thousands of facilities. I've only shown some, I haven't shown everything. But you can see the picture is the same, yes? The principle is the same. If I pick, for example...
So there is an opportunity here, right?
Absolutely. Now you've got it. So there's a problem. Wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity, okay? So I produced this because, and I did this a couple of years ago, because I could see that operators' investment and government regulatory policy was not driving what we want 5G to do, which is industrialize things properly. And so I had to prove it. So now I can prove it. So I know exactly the cell location in every country because we build the sites. I know the performance everywhere because I pay Ookla all the money. So every time you do a speed test, thank you, I just got some more data. And my AI engine does all this and puts it in my cloud. So that's exactly how I do these things now. And I have economic data up here and then growth and all those sectors for everything. I've got everything. World Health, United Nations, World Economic Forum. I blend everything and my AI goes and churns it and produces results. So you're correct, country. There's a big opportunity here. Right? There's a big opportunity here to be the preferred integrator, if you want to do that construction bit. There's an opportunity to come to APJ and say, J4, no problem. I'll transform your hospitals. You pay me 10 ringgit a patient. Don't worry about the capital cost. 10 ringgit a patient. Different business model, yes? I won't notice it on my bill. And what do I get? The hospital now gets 5G, cloud services, all hospital patient management systems in the cloud. I can pay by touch and go or by HSS app, whichever direction you're getting, as an example. There's many things you could do, right? Yeah, you could do, there are many things you could do. They're very hard to do, right? If all this was easy, you'd have more than just Google, Apple, Huawei, and Amazon, right? There'd be a million of these companies everywhere because everybody gets it and says, I can do it. It's very hard to execute this. Yeah, even Graham Payne's company in the UK is doing half a dozen to a dozen. Cambridge Wireless, which I'm collaborating with in the UK, we can do every 12 weeks 3 as an ecosystem proof of concept to take it to market. It's terribly difficult, right? So why I produced it this way is because I want to count up how many of these things there are and see how much money there is in each of these big ones, or in many, many, many small ones that are really easy to do, that I can send one engineer there and in 2 hours I'm finished. Because that's where you get the economies of scale. Make it once and make it a sausage. But I've done this myself, by the way. It's terrible. You can do 100 sites per hour. Google, right-click, hospital, Malaysia, 20 per page, right-click, geo-coordinates, copy, paste in Excel, upload to the database. You can only do 100 per hour. After I did that, I calculated the economics. Cheaper to pay several thousand pounds to the UK consultants and say, you guys do it. But you know, there's all the data here. I'd like to show you an example of Thailand. Not because I'm trying to discredit Malaysia or anything, I'm just trying to show you how I arrived at this conclusion. And I'm going to take my GB. So this was the first interesting observation. You remember the number was 374 for Malaysia, and Thailand has up to 4 or 5 times hospitals. Just an interesting observation. I never noticed it before. But can you see the difference? It's not about the coverage, but you can see that in a lot of cases they are covering, but that wasn't their target. I even showed this to AIS and to True Telecom. You're missing the point. You know, this is a huge money earner for your country because you bring in foreigners because you say your healthcare system is the best. That's what Thailand brands itself. But can you see it's not done at all? So now Thailand is digitalizing with 5G AI cloud their hospitals. So they've just started on a couple of hospitals. So one of the ones in the previous yes, one I've just forgotten. It wasn't Chulalongkorn. It was begins with S. Sukapan or something. Anyway, one of the big hospitals in downtown Bangkok was their first hospital they converted into 5G. In China, we've done 1,800 in 1 year. So I'm excited. Thailand will get it. Thailand will do all of them. I guarantee.
So what is the benefit of it? I mean, what do they do
In the hospital? All right. So in the hospital, I rushed through that, but in the hospital, it doesn't really matter which country I pick. These segments are the market segmentation, and on the left-hand side you see the metrics. So fewer days in hospital, increased self-care. So if you have fewer people in hospital and you're caring for yourself, you actually make more money because you treat more patients. And that's the key measure. Higher quality of care, healthier population, more patients through, you charge patients per whatever you actually get. So when it's not NHS, which is free, then this is very, very good because the more patients you get through, the more money you make. Yes. The NHS is not good because, as the NHS found, if they can do 10 hip replacements at £200,000 per hip replacement per day, and suddenly they've improved the system and they can do 40, their cost went up, but they didn't make any more money because it's free. case of that NHS, the business model is actually wrong. And I know that because the director of NHS is a friend of mine, and he told me that actually exactly the numbers. He said we had to scale it back because we didn't actually have the cash to support the number of patients we could treat. But generally, higher patient throughput, less wait time, all of these things contribute. Some of them at a macro level, some of them at a micro level. And each one is very different according to what you're doing. A lot of, I mean, here's a very good one, okay? This on less travel. We only touch the iceberg in looking at less travel. I mean, I went to the doctor yesterday and I was right on time, maybe a few minutes early. He was there, so he was in a call, and 40 minutes later he sees me. I don't know if you've ever been to the doctor. Have you ever started your consultation on time or finished on time? Never in your life. My uncle was a GP, never, even with mine, right? Never. So they're hopeless at this. And perhaps we're also hopeless. I'm sorry, Doc, I'm running late. Okay, he's got to reschedule everything. Yeah. So this is actually significant. So we can compute this here, right? Because we can work it out. But if I told you that we haven't yet computed how much extra it is because you had to drive to see the doctor, and we know 30% of all patients go there, you know, Doc, I'm not real sure, but you know, and COVID is here, I've got this bit of a cough, so it's okay, Paul, you're fine. Thanks, Doc. Right? 30% of patients are like this, and as they're older, it's bigger, more than 30%, because they want somebody to talk to whom they trust. So they want to come there. So this number is more than 30%. So you imagine all the cost structure of traveling and going there, and if it was efficient, what could be done? So Babylon Health, run by Avi, an Iranian guy out of the UK. The UK government, NHS, paid him £200 per customer who chooses to do digital and not come to their I'm sort of probably going to run out of time in the battery anyhow. But so they're examples of what's doing this. So next, I mean, what would we do? What could we do next? We have to align with a number of different players. You can't come up with a solution if you're going to transform it, or come up with a solution if you haven't got all the parts. So the parts need to be available at the right price, and they need to be proven, they need to be standardized, all of those things before you pick an industry sector. When you're picking an industry sector, you need to understand who are the partners in the ecosystem to make it happen. And preferably, if we have fewer, we all make more money, so we prefer that, right? We have to think about, because this is using a technology which is based on connectivity, we don't have licenses for that from other parties, the big boys, then we need to woo them to make sure that we can, at least that's 3 parties, can align on this bit. Yes? And then if you're going to lead it, you need to demonstrate that you're in control and you know how to lead. Otherwise you become the slave. Yes? So there's a few things you need to do to get your house in order. And the way I like to do it is a proof of concept. So I like that what we've done is we come and talk to certain companies, relationship, trust, and collaboration and trust. Right? So if we've got the trust, we can probably open the door and start talking. If we can start talking, we can start doing what we showed on our other slide, the middle group, exploration, and try to find out what are the real challenges. Just because it worked in China or in Thailand or in UK doesn't mean it will work in Malaysia. Maybe the cost is wrong, maybe the culture is wrong, maybe the adoption is wrong. Maybe the ecosystem is not right. Maybe there's rules and regulations that prevent us from doing things. We'd love it to be, you know, not cheap labour, we can do it this way. No, not allowed, you have to use this, and it could be anything. But we know generally now, not generally, we know very specifically which industries can and what the lowest hanging fruit for the use case is that makes money. And there are 3 things that make money: video, video, and video. Video in security, because everybody has security systems. Video now linked with temperature because of COVID and because of PPE. And video, if we extend that one into productivity, whether people are, 1, wearing protective gear, 2, doing what they're supposed to be doing and not playing with their phone or going to the toilet 20 times a day, they're actually working. Attending work on time. This is not rocket science, right? The AI requirements for these things is very small. They all need cloud, they all need data storage and simple analytics. And we do them right now under those. You could do it here in your company. You could put one camera, you take a picture of everybody. Let's put privacy to the side. I'm sure you'll look after the privacy of the IT team. Then we know precisely who arrived when and who left when. Maybe that's not what you want, and maybe you don't need to do that because you have a trusting with a different type of organisation. But for organisations, that's one of the first things we do. Oh, I forgot my pass. Yes, no need for the pass. You just walk in, the gate's automatic. In Huawei, it's all automatic. We've tested on ourselves, right? I can still remember the learning algorithm, and I'd come up there, and 62% it thinks it's this guy. It's not, right? And then after a couple of months, it's now 85%. We think it's Paul Scanlan, and 15% of the time think it's these other people. And then after another couple of months, it's Paul, the gate's open all the time. But I saw the training algorithms working. We even started training on audio. So another component is audio. So just as we can take an image, video, or still, it doesn't matter, even a continuous video footage, from that we can convert it to stills and check all the features we know precisely. Now you can extend that to equipment. A camera can take a picture of all the codes and everything. We know precisely all the inventory in this room, all the inventory on a project. Very easy to do. Not easy, you need the ERP software, but third parties have them, probably your management, project management platforms have it as well. So video is one of these ones. Audio is the next one. Just as with audio, we take audio samples of things like spider monkeys and chainsaws. And in Costa Rica, with ISE, their government-owned mobile company, we now put audio sensors in the rainforest in Costa Rica because the environmentalists want to protect both the rainforest, illegal logging. As soon as we hear the noise, we know it's a chainsaw, we send in the police by helicopter. The spider monkeys, we're trying to identify where the spider monkeys are because they're endangered. Same thing, so we keep the people in the ecosystem. Who would have thought we would do things like that?
In Malaysia, how many 5G providers? Because implementing all these systems requires 5G coverage network, right?
Well,
so how many providers are there, and what is the rate of adoption of 5G here?
Very good. So, as your colleague over here mentioned, there's the big players who do 4G networks and 3 and 2G. But in 5G, the government is picked one company to do this, and maybe some things will change. But at the moment, it's one company doing it, and one company has phases and rolling out according to their business plan, which is led by the government. And whilst we try to talk about these things to the government, sometimes the government gets it, and sometimes governments don't get it. Yes, and there are many different interests. So I don't really want to address those parts, but I don't know the answer to that question. Yes. But you're quite right. It needs to be done. Now, if you rely on the DMVs, it's going to take a long time, personally. But if you have companies that are professional, capable, understand it, and you talk to the government or the industry in a different way, maybe we can adopt some of this now without waiting for 5G. So I've been mentioning video. 4G does video. 5G does it better. We could start with 4G. Okay, you ask how can we load 5G? Well, we start with the 4G hardware, or the hardware today that can accommodate 5G. Then when 5G is ready, we just change the software and we get better productivity. So we could start IoT. All IoT standards fit under 5G. They're backward compatible. Right now, if Cellcom, Maxis, Mobile, Digi all turned on the software, you could have IoT in the country tomorrow. I really mean it. Download the software, it's available tomorrow. So a lot of those industrial applications that use IoT sensors, devices, parking meters and all that, you can do it tomorrow. Yes, really, you could do that tomorrow. If you're prepared to pay for the software, and you had access to 1 million cars for parking, and you had the deals with the car parks, you could start to do that really instantly. But you can't do it instantly because it's not a technology problem. It's a business problem. Did I cover enough? Some things?
That's all good.
think so. Yeah. I don't know. I could talk about a lot more things, but I think we would just carry on the whole day. And,
Any other
well, if I could suggest, but just, what would be very good is whether together as a company or individually or in groups, because you probably all have different groups because you're responsible for different things, and just start some brainstorming, ask questions. I didn't understand this, he said that, and I don't really see how that works. So you've got a whole list of questions. Or we got that bit, could we do it like this? Okay, he said that to do that we needed a couple of key things. We've got that and that, we haven't got that. Oh, that's probably too hard, or I don't understand. Start to build up this framework in your own company. Because if you rely on somebody else to do it, I'll tell you a little story. There's a company called Hexa. Hexa, they make the dried chilies. There's 75 people. There's 70 of them doing the normal stuff, but 5 people do digital transformation. They did all the photographs, they took all the pictures, wrote it, put it in the cloud, and did all the cloud analytics. And from chilies, they went to tomatoes, and now they're going shopping to other companies. So if you don't know how to transform your company, I can recommend 5 guys in Hexa who can come in here, and they used to sell chilies, but today they're doing digital transformation, if you get my meaning. So if you rely on somebody else to tell you, then somebody else will probably say, if I tell you how to fish, then you're going to catch all the fish. So I think I'll just catch the fish. If you get, and the reason I said originally the data why I think HSE is interesting, it's an engineering company. I'm an engineer. It's an engineering company. You're engineers, you start at 1, you get to 10. But we're very methodical, right? So as long as we've got the bits, we know how to execute. My job is to give you the bits.
Oh, your R&D budget.
Sorry?
Your R&D budget.
Our R&D budget, so Huawei last year was $130 billion. We spent $21.5 billion on R&D. So we spend more than 10% of our revenue every year on R&D. So in 10 years, more than $100 billion US dollars. To put things in perspective, $21.5 billion is bigger than the sum of Ericsson, Nokia, ZTE, Cisco, and anybody else you like to add into the bucket of their R&D. And our revenue, our R&D, 21.5 billion, is bigger than most of those companies' revenue. And we're a private company, despite what you may have heard. I have shares, not many, but a couple. And all the people are incentivized to drive a target. And so the company's operation is very different. If you're a public company, you have some challenges, yes? Because the 1 million shareholders sort of are telling you what to do. I can remember 6 years ago when this thing about 5G was starting a little bit of inertia in our company, we had a very good year. In June, we were going to make an extra $1 billion net profit. I can remember the group CEO standing and said, there's 200 of us, the execs in the room, big lecture room like this, we are going to make an extra $1 billion. Look at the numbers. And we're all thinking, this is going to be good. You can see the smile on every. But I'm sorry, we've decided to put an extra $1 billion in, $600 million into R&D into this thing called 5G. And we're going to make a new chip. But 6 years later or 5 years later, we have issues coming from the US and everything, and our revenue continued to grow at 20%. This year we'll have challenges, for sure. We can't get the chips for the handsets. So that is $30 billion gone, revenue. The good thing is the profit's gone up by 10%. So how can that possibly be? Well, if you push a bear into a corner, it's going to figure things out and come out fighting and do things different. Right? So now we have a digital power department. We take all the clever batteries and power technology and power management and we put it into something else. We have an electric vehicle department. We don't make electric vehicles, but we make everything inside the vehicle. Batteries, the chargers, the 5G, the IoT, the server, the storage, because that's what's in a new car today. And we extend that into mining and into ports and so that's what we do and how we change and focus. And we transform every year. Every year the CEO will say directly to me, okay, Paul, you did that last year. What's this year? What's new? The industry, no, Paul, what's new? You have to do something new this year. Right? We did that last year. But we need to scale it up. No, that's not your job. Pass that over to that department. His job will scale. What's new? Your department, innovation. What are you innovating next? I'll tell you another story. There was 2011, so 10, 11, so it must be 2008, 2009, 2007 to 2009, Mr. Red, our founder, our chairman, gave as a bonus to the R&D engineers, the directors, their product as a present that no customer bought. So it's very important to understand what the customer wants before you R&D invent it and find nobody. I'm very serious. That was the bonus for those two departments, right? Because they invented something that nobody wanted. Basically, they convinced the management this is a good idea. Management funded it, and so, well, there's your bonus. You can have what you. So, there's a few interesting stories like this. Yeah, please.
Any other Q&A? What? Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you. It was a very good. Very good.
I'd like to be safe with that evidence.
Sorry, I think I have one question.
Yes.
Someone outside.
Oh, yes, because you have people online. Yes,
Yeah.
That's right.
How are they implementing in Costa Rica jungles for logging and animal monitoring? Have they built 5G base stations for coverage there?
Now, this is a very interesting question. For Costa Rica, very specifically, obviously people are not building networks in the jungle, yes, because there's no business there, traditional business, which is selling SIMs. Costa Rica did not have 5G when we started the program. For the audio files, the data is actually quite small. It's not a video file. So we chose to use 4G dedicated for this, and we chose to use a frequency that can go about 10 to 20 kilometers radius. So the capital cost was, I'll say, manageable. That's the first part. The second one, we used the technologies that we could, but we used the AI to do all the clever stuff. So the audio files we now have, if you go to our cloud, you can click on Model Arts, and it'll give you 3 examples. I think one is image, one is video, and one is audio. So you can click on audio, and it'll guide you how to do the audio setup, and in about half a day, you'll be pretty good at it. So that's what we did with Costa Rica. And I think one of the sponsors may have been the United Nations. So the money didn't just come from ISE or the government. There was probably some incentive to stop logging. Another country, sometimes Norway pays for these things. You know, Norway's very big on environment, and they pay countries to stop logging. But I can find out who paid exactly what the business model is, because my director works in that region. The customer said that's working pretty well. But it's a very interesting, unusual use case. Yes. Sometimes we pioneer things ourselves. Advanced warehouse management using IoT and 5G, specifically 5G. We built it in our own warehouse in Brazil. So we built a 4G one and a 5G one inside the warehouse, and we showed the operator how to do it. We built it, we paid for it, and then we showed them all the use cases so they could learn. And we got some benefit, of course. Yes, we put the capital in, but we get benefit from that. And we can also show the differences between 4 and 5G, and that convinced the operators why to invest in 5G. In the cloud, we built the cloud ourselves back in 2009 and 10. Before we sold it to StarHub first, we proved it internally to prove the operational efficiency and all those components. So we tend to try things ourselves, and once we get it, then we deploy it. So cloud, we tried to enable all the companies. So we built clouds with them, and we invested, and they did nothing. And then 5 years later, we said we closed those, we built our own cloud, and we run it ourselves because they don't understand it as a business. In Malaysia, it's very good. Telekom Malaysia and Huawei have a joint venture. So the best part about this is it's a Malaysian company. The servers are stored here. Everything is here in Malaysia in 3 different data centers run by TM. So all your data is protected in Malaysia. Amazon does not have a presence like that here. It's in Singapore, and Microsoft also does not. So a very easy way to compete against those two competitors, is to just say everything is in Malaysia. Right? So again, you need to think about these components when you're trying to do business deals. And that's why Data and I have been very keen to try and get a local company to manufacture the IoT devices and things and partner this way. Because if you can do it, maybe the cost structure will be higher than buying it from China, for sure, because the scale is different. But at least you control your own destiny. Yes, I work for a Chinese company. We'd love you to buy all those things, but quite frankly, I think local is very important. Develop the local talent, develop the local ecosystem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.